We are getting new reports about a chilling and downright shocking escalation of ICE tactics against the residents of Chicago. In the middle of the night, hundreds of armed federal agents and police, backed up by riot trucks, smoke grenades, and helicopters, breached fences and busted doors in an immigration raid on an entire apartment building on the city's south side. They pulled dozens of residents from their homes and zip ties, including children, some of them without any clothes. They then held some outside for hours and dragged the others into rented vans.
It was scary because I've never had a gun put in my face.
Neighbors like Ebony Watson says they ducked for cover as they heard several flashbangs go off.
They was terrified. The kids was crying. People was screaming. They looked very distraught. I was out there crying when I seen the little girl come around the corner. Because they was bringing the kids out too. Had them zip tied to each other. One of them literally laughed. He was standing right here. He said, them kids.
They zip tied the kids together. ICE put out a statement saying they were pursuing Trinidad gang members. But U.S. citizens living in the building say they were detained too. The cops told them that if they had any unrelated warrants, they wouldn't be going back home. 37 people were ultimately arrested after agents separated children from their parents on the street. And if you're looking at this and asking yourself, how is this legal? That is the right question to ask. And it has kind of an answer. And to understand it, you have to go back to Los Angeles this summer, where federal immigration agents started pushing the envelope on orders from the White House. They raided Home Depot parking lots and Walmart lots, and they grabbed people they saw. Near one Home Depot, masked agents with batons grabbed Narcisco Barranco, who has lived in the U.S. for more than 30 years and has 3 sons serving in the Marine Corps. Agents beat Barranco on the ground, dislocating his shoulder before detaining him. In Van Nuys, agents raided a car wash, remembering this, sending patrons and workers scrambling before the 79-year-old owner, who is a U.S. citizen named Rafi, tried to ask them what they were doing.
That is when Rafi was taken down by agents and eventually handcuffed. Rafi says he was injured in the process.
And they sit on me. This is my elbow about a week ago. And this is my arm.
Rafi says he and 5 others at his car wash were taken to a federal detention center downtown. We're still working to learn more about why they were detained.
And that man is not alone.
Look how you got my hand. You're twisting that. I'm American, bro.
Yo, these guys are literally based off of skin color. My homie was born here just because of the way he looks.
Agents kept stopping people they suspected of being undocumented immigrants for no reason other than they weren't obviously white. Like Brian Gavidia, the man you saw there, the 29-year-old American. He wasn't arrested, but he says agents went through his phone for 20 minutes and kept his real ID card. Now, these are obvious violations of people's core constitutional civil rights, their right to equal protection and the freedom from unlawful searches and seizures. And victims filed a class action lawsuit. And after an entire bench trial, a federal judge sided with those victims and ended the ICE sweeps. And in her ruling, she wrote, "It is illegal to conduct roving patrols which identify people based upon race alone, aggressively question them, and then detain them without a warrant, without their consent, and without reasonable suspicion that they are with status." Yes, it is. Yes, it is. An appeals court upheld her injunction against ICE. You have to stop doing this. And so the Trump administration took the issue to the Supreme Court. And lo and behold, last month, the court's 6-3 conservative majority voted to just let Trump and ICE continue for now, as the case works its way up, to use racial profiling in their immigration raids, halting the lower court's decision, saying, go ahead. Now, they gave no reasoning or explanation for their decision, silent, except Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who wrote a short concurring opinion saying there's absolutely no problem whatsoever with racially motivated stops by law enforcement. Quote, if the officers learn the individual they stopped is a U.S. citizen or otherwise lawfully in the U.S., they promptly let the individual go. Welcome to the era of what critics call the Kavanaugh stop. Carte blanche for ICE to continue violent, warrantless raids and stops all over the country to undocumented immigrants, lawful residents, and American citizens alike. Like Leonardo Garcia Venegas. You see him there, being cuffed roughly by ICE agents on a construction site where he was working. Vargas showed the agents his real ID as proof of citizenship, and they told him he was lying. And it took hours to get him out of custody, so not exactly expeditious. And then, get this, 2 weeks later, ICE arrested him again at another work site. He's now suing the government. The consequence of all this is what we're seeing now in the dead of night in Chicago. Dozens of federal agents raiding an entire apartment building with kids in it just to see what they can find. It's the most egregious abuse of our basic rights as Americans I've seen in a long time, maybe my lifetime. And it comes 2 weeks after Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem posted a hype video of another violent ICE raid with helicopters and grenades, this time on a house in the Chicago suburbs. And guess what? 2 U.S. citizens were mistakenly arrested. You know, there's a reason the American founders put the right to be free from unlawful searches and seizures in the Bill of Rights from the start. Masked secret police profiling people and now targeting entire apartment buildings, making everyone prove they're not guilty of something, is the province of tyrants. It is the opposite of American. And I don't think Americans will stand for it, nor should they.
I want to go to Illinois now, where the governor is standing by with Jacob Soboroff, a governor who has been fighting against having federal troops come into his cities and the environs, and as a result has heard it said by the president of the United States that he should be jailed. Jacob, let me throw it over to you and the governor.
Chris, thank you so much. Governor J.B. Pritzker, thanks for joining us live on MSNBC.
How are you, Jake? We're good to see you.
It's good to see you as well. You know as well as I do, the President of the United States in the last 24 hours called for you to be imprisoned. I want to give you an opportunity. We've seen your reaction on social media, but I want to hear what you have to say back to the President of the United States.
Well, let's start with the idea that this is a convicted felon. I mean, think about that, who is threatening to jail me. I got to say, this guy's unhinged. He's insecure. He's a wannabe dictator. And there's one thing I really want to say to Donald Trump. If you come for my people, you come through me. So come and get me.
What does that mean exactly, Governor? Do you believe that he would follow through or that he'll chicken out? He basically said the same thing to Governor Gavin Newsom when I was with him at the height of the raids in the Los Angeles area. Governor Gavin Newsom is walking free on the streets of California. You think that he'll chicken out, or would he ever arrest you?
Well, you know the expression, Trump always chickens out, taco. And I got to say, he can't arrest. We've done nothing wrong here. And very importantly, it's Donald Trump that is breaching the Constitution, breaking the law. We're taking him to court, and I believe we're going to win.
Right now, in the Chicagoland area, the Texas National Guard is staging for a deployment that Governor Greg Abbott has ordered. What's the latest? Do you know where they are, what they're doing at this hour?
Well, to be clear, Donald Trump ordered it and federalized those troops, and Greg Abbott's just going along. This is the same guy, by the way, Greg Abbott, who last year complained when Joe Biden tried to call up his National Guard and actually wrote a letter, signed a letter opposing that. Now he's okay with it because why? He's a lackey of Donald Trump. So we know that the Texas National Guard has been staging in Illinois. They're not yet, as far as I understand, on the streets, but I want you to know, the federal government is not communicating with our state.
They're not talking to you about where these troops are going.
It's unconscionable. This has never happened before. They're calling out troops onto the streets of a state that doesn't want them. And they're not even telling us where they're going to go, what they're going to do. This hasn't happened, I don't think, since the Civil War.
Let me ask you about the lawsuit. You have sued to stop their deployment. You didn't sue to stop National Guard on a nationwide level. You sued to, correct me if I'm wrong, just the Texas National Guard.
Actually, no. We sued to stop him from calling out the Illinois National Guard, the Texas National Guard, and all other National Guards, because it is unconstitutional.
On the streets, even before the National Guard has made it to the streets of Illinois, you've got the Border Patrol. I was in Cicero yesterday, a 90% Latino population, and I watched as they not only picked people off the streets, but family members would come up to me and ask me where their family members were. I watched you with Rachel the other night here on MSNBC, and you were talking about how CBP has basically used the justification of the 100-mile border rule to allow the deployment here, and they're saying the border of Lake Michigan, the coast of Lake Michigan is the border. Lake Michigan, many people reached out to me and said, Lake Michigan doesn't even touch Canada. Are you thinking about suing to stop the deployment of the Border Patrol here as well?
Look, I think it's important to recognize that the Trump administration doesn't seem to respect any laws in the United States. They just do what they want to do, and they'll keep doing it unless someone stops them. here in Illinois, we're stopping it. We're doing everything that we can to push back. And yeah, they've got armed, we're talking about automatic weapons and camouflaged, and they're not soldiers, right? These are ICE and Customs and Border Patrol agents that are roaming the streets of Chicago, in downtown Chicago. Why? It's a show. It's a show of force. And why does Donald Trump want to do that? And I've said this before, and I think it's important for people to hear it. He wants to militarize major cities across the United States, especially blue cities in blue states, because he wants us to get used to the idea of military on the streets, military troops, because there are 2026 elections. I believe that he's going to post people outside of ballot boxes and polling places, and if he needs to, in order to control those elections, he'll assume control of the ballot boxes and count the votes himself. He promised to do that. He threatened to do that back in 2020. Didn't get the chance to do it. I believe he would do it in 2026.
Do you believe we'll have free and fair elections in the United States of America during the 2026 midterms?
If we all stand up and speak out, we sure as heck will. And you see there are literally hundreds of people here who are standing up to speak out, and we've seen in the No Kings protests and others, millions of people standing up. We need more.
I asked you when I saw you the other day about if the president invokes the Insurrection Act. You said you use every tool at your disposal to stop the deployment of federal troops on the streets of Chicago and throughout your state. Are you willing to direct the state police to arrest any federal officials for what they're doing here?
Look, we don't break the law here in Illinois. I'm not going to direct our state police to break the law the way that Donald Trump directs people to break the law. What we will do is fight like heck in the courts. We have to rely upon judges. And by the way, a Trump-appointed judge made the decision on Oregon and the calling out of the California National Guard. Judges will and can do the right thing. We have to rely upon our courts. I'm not looking beyond that. We have to make sure that happens. But the other thing we have to make sure that happens is we elect good people to the Congress. Because in the end, if Congress is not asking questions, holding hearings, and holding the president accountable, he will just run roughshod across our states.
What's your message, final question, to the people here of the state of Illinois, the people of the city of Chicago, as this incursion by the federal government, these troops are on the streets of your state, of this city? What do you want them to do? There's a big protest scheduled for 5:30 p.m. tonight.
Well, first, we've made sure that people know their rights and they know how to find out what their rights are, because we don't want them picked up off the streets just because they're brown or black, just because they happen to be undocumented and have committed no crimes. Remember, he said he was going after the worst of the worst. It's not going after the worst of the worst when you're just literally stopping children who happen to be brown and asking them for papers as if, they're going to have proof that they're a U.S. citizen. So first, know your rights. Second, we want everybody to pull out their phones, an Android, an iPhone, whatever you've got, and film everything you see, because we take that to court. We also show it to the public. And it's one of the reasons that so many people are speaking up and acting up in order to fight Donald Trump, because they're seeing this is not the country that we grew up in. This is not the country that we want. And so that's very important. And then lastly, again, we got to take them to court. We got to win. It looks like we're going to do that.
For someone who has been threatened with arrest by the president of the United States in the last 24 hours, it's nice to see you out here on the street with all these people, and I'm grateful for your time.
Appreciate
a lot of people
you,
want to talk to you. Okay, thank you. Governor J.B. Pritzker, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Chris, the governor of the great state of Illinois, obviously a lot of people want to speak to him out here. This is a critical, crucial moment in this battle with the federal government over the deployment of not only troops, but these masked and armed federal agents here on the streets of Illinois. And I'm going to throw it back to you.
Well, if I can, Jacob, I want to ask you about a couple things. In our last hour, we talked about a couple of examples of things that had happened in Chicago. Well, multiple ones, but I'm thinking particularly about the Chicago Tribune photo. Somebody's videoing, which the governor just said, take videos, right? And has a weapon aimed at them. The Chicago Tribune has that picture. And then the clergyman, who it was reported, was praying, hands raised, eyes closed, and was shot multiple times with pepper bullets. I wonder if you've had a chance, because I know you were rushing to get over to be able to talk to the governor, but I wonder if you've had a chance to talk to the people who are in these crowds of protesters, any concerns they have, or what they're telling you about why they feel strongly enough to be there on the streets.
Let me, Chris, guys, let's just move a little bit because the governor, actually, Chris, I'll show you the governor's having immediate availability right behind us. Connor, just let them see that real quick. And so I just want to be out of the background of what the governor's up to. The answer to the question is, I think, first of all, number one, we can stop here, guys. Number one is that the people of Illinois obviously are out there and feel like that their rights are being infringed upon. And the governor said as much, which is why he continues to direct people to video. And these are all cases that are going to go into federal court eventually. I want to remind everybody that out at the Broadview facility, and I'm trying to see the pictures on the screen right now if that's Broadview or not, the Broadview ICE Detention Center where the mother of Samantha and Mario and Daniel were taken after they were arrested, as you and I talked on the air yesterday, has been a flashpoint for a lot of these aggressive enforcement tactics. Pepper balls being shot at journalists, as you said, guns being drawn in certain areas, less lethal weapons being drawn on civilians. This is now almost like an everyday occurrence, and I think that on the contrary to deterring people from being out in the streets, it has emboldened people to be out on the streets, and so you're not really seeing sort of any shortage of that. And I think that, as I mentioned to the governor, there's a protest scheduled for 6:30 p.m. on the East Coast tonight, 5:30 p.m. here. He's telling people to be out there. People are mobilizing, and I think we'll be out there. And so these types of confrontations, while they might continue, I actually don't think that they're slowing people down at all. I think it's making people more likely to want to be out into the streets.
We begin tonight in Chicago, where National Guard troops are mobilizing on the outskirts of that city. The governor of the state of Illinois does not want them there, nor does the mayor of Chicago. The president of the United States today called for those two men to be jailed. Quote, Chicago mayor should be in jail for failing to protect ICE officers. Governor Pritzker also. And on a day when Trump's former FBI director was being arraigned in a Virginia courthouse, talk like this should probably be taken quite seriously.
These leaders in these local cities, along with Pritzker and Johnson, ignore what's going on, or, sir, they're helping Antifa cover it up.
I think actually they're petrified. You know, their families live there, everything else. I actually think they're scared. Pritzker was a failure in his family. They threw him out of the family business. Guy's a loser. But you know what? They actually, I believe they're scared. They're actually frightened for their lives.
For his part, Governor Pritzker does not appear to be petrified.
This is a convicted felon. I mean, think about that, who's threatening to jail me. I got to say, this guy's unhinged. He's insecure. He's a wannabe dictator. And there's one thing I really want to say to Donald Trump. If you come for my people, you come through me. So come and get me.
That kind of posture from the governor is pretty important at a time like this, because this is all happening just a week after the president of the United States assembled the 800 highest-ranking commanders of the U.S. Armed Forces and told them to be prepared to fight the enemy within.
We should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military. Because we're going into Chicago very soon. That's a big city. It's the enemy from within, and we have to handle it before it gets out of control.
What we've been seeing in Chicago already from ICE and other federal agents sure does look like an extension of that project. It feels like an attempted federal occupation, with images like this shared by a reporter with the Chicago Tribune of a federal agent pointing a weapon out of the car window at a woman who was filming them. Last Friday, we saw folks in a residential neighborhood, in the middle of the day, bright sunshine, get tear gassed. The chemical agent was used just a block away from an elementary school during a school day. Across social media, there is video after video after video of people being detained, often violently by federal agents, while onlookers yell at them. Like this video on your screen of Border Patrol trying to forcibly restrain a man while onlookers attempt to intervene. In one instance, a Democratic congressional candidate was violently thrown to the ground by ICE. You see that there? For exercising her constitutional right to protest the agency's presence in her city. Just last month, a pastor was shot in the head with what appears to be a kind of pepper ball projectile while speaking outside an ICE detention facility in the Chicago suburb of Broadview. I want to warn you, some viewers may find the video of that incident upsetting. The Department of Homeland Security says those, quote, agitators were blocking an ICE vehicle and throwing bottles. In his own words, that man, Reverend David Black, said, quote, I told them there was still time to repent, believe the good news, and turn from their wicked ways. That's when they opened fire. And again, this is all just the beginning. Today, NBC News is reporting the White House is now holding serious discussions about invoking the Insurrection Act of 1807, a law that the White House believes would allow Trump to marshal federal troops to act as law enforcement agents in our cities without nearly as many legal constraints over how those troops could operate. It would be, I think, akin to a kind of declaration of war against the people of this country with no actual legitimate justification. There is no insurrection. One person close to the White House telling NBC the debate over the Insurrection Act is working its way up an escalatory ladder. What we are seeing in Chicago sure looks like the opening move in a larger vision for this country, where the leader consolidates power to harness state, local, and federal police in cooperation with the U.S. military, which is trained to defend America from foreign threats and instead unleashes them against Americans.
I see the guns and bats in this room. You are unleashed. The handcuffs that you're carrying, they're not on you anymore. They're on the criminals. And whatever you need to get it done, we're going to get it done. State, local, federal, on President Trump's promise, we are going to get it done.
The pretext in all of this has been fighting criminals. But Stephen Miller and Donald Trump want to treat Americans who do not support their agenda like enemies, like people the U.S. is engaged in war against. And I've got to say, the response we're seeing against that vision in cities like Chicago is really actually inspiring, emboldening. I mean, despite being far less willing to weigh into American politics than his predecessor, the new Pope, Pope Leo, who is from Chicago, is calling out Trump's overreach. In remarks to bishops visiting him at the Vatican today, the Holy Father urged them to use the pulpit to speak out against Trump's draconian immigration policies. This administration has decisively lost the moral high ground on this issue. People at a deep level understand that what they are seeing in Chicago is wrong. They know that they are free citizens of a free country that we spent hundreds of years at trying to achieve and perfect. They know they have a right to film ICE and even to peacefully, verbally challenge ICE. They have a right to protest, to stand outside detention centers, to try and shame people that are committing what they believe to be grave injustices. And the fact that they are continuing to do that, even in the face of this onslaught, is a testament to the fact that Americans will not be intimidated. Just like a certain Chicago delivery cyclist outmaneuvered ICE last week.
What's up?
Jacob Soboroff is MSNBC's senior national political and national correspondent. He joins me live from Chicago, not far from where that footage was taken. Jacob, what's going on there tonight?
Chris, this is amazing. I was just thinking this was almost exactly 4 months to the day that you and I talked on the streets of L.A. after that first raid in downtown Los Angeles brought hundreds, if not thousands, of people to the streets. It feels like deja vu. And I say that because this is a jubilant atmosphere. These are people who do not and will not tolerate federal troops, whether they are highly kitted up Border Patrol agents or members of the National Guard on the streets of Chicago. You know this better than anybody. Tonight is a critical playoff game for the Chicago Cubs. A lot of these people could be doing something else, sitting in a bar, watching television. They're out here because most of them say they're here to protect democracy. I've not seen anything like this in Chicago. I spent a lot of time here. You know, my wife's from here. Look at this. This is Michigan Avenue in the middle of downtown Chicago. Here, too, hundreds, if not thousands of people. And it's not a feeling of anger. It is not a feeling of terror, which is being felt in much of the other parts of this city and of the Chicagoland area, where they're indiscriminately going around picking up people, not who are violent criminals or the worst of the worst, but I'll give you two examples that I saw myself. A 53-year-old mother going to pick up meat to make a stew from Mexico who has been here for 30 years and is now in the Broadview ICE Detention Center. Another one is two gentlemen who are on their way to work as mechanics, literally going to pick up a cup of coffee in Cicero, 90% Hispanic, 90,000 people there, the most Hispanic neighborhood in all of Illinois, and Border Patrol rolled up on them. Literally, the guys left their coffee cups there. They detained both of those guys. One of them's already in Georgia on his way to being deported. There they're angry. There they're terrified. Here the energy is it's electric.
Jacob Soboroff bringing us that live dispatch from Michigan Avenue tonight. Jacob, it's so good to have you there. Keep up with us. Thank you.
Ahead of the expected arrival of federalized National Guard troops in Chicago, just plain federal agents in Chicago, from ICE, from CBP, from the FBI, from other agencies, they've been treating the city like it's Fallujah 2004 or something. This is from the Chicago Sun-Times. Quote, armed federal agents in military fatigues busted down their doors overnight, pulling men, women, and children from their apartments in Chicago, some of them naked. Residents and witnesses said agents approached or entered nearly every apartment in this 5-story building. U.S. citizens were among those detained for hours. The next day, toys, shoes, and food were still in piles in the building's hallways. Property managers were seen throwing mattresses and broken doors into dumpsters. Neighbors said federal agents used flashbang grenades to burst through the building, and several drones and helicopters were deployed. One woman who lives across the street said it looked like hundreds of agents were outside her door. She said she saw agents dragging residents, including kids, out of the building without any clothes on and into U-Haul vans. Kids were separated from their mothers. This is from the Associated Press. Agents used unmarked trucks and a helicopter to surround this 5-story apartment building in Chicago. News Nation, which was invited to observe the operation, reported that agents, quote, repelled from Black Hawk helicopters. Agents then went door to door, woke up residents, and used zip ties to restrain them. Again, keep in mind, this is before the military gets there. This is just what Trump's federal agents are doing in Chicago. Calling in the Black Hawk helicopters to raid a residential apartment building. And then zip tying all the kids and the old people and breaking down all the doors and ransacking all the apartments. I mean, this is what they're doing to the American people in Chicago already before they send in federal troops. This is just federal agents. Trump is trying to deploy federalized National Guard to Chicago against the wishes of the mayor and the governor. Again, we're going to talk with Governor Pritzker about the lawsuit that he's brought to try to stop that deployment when we speak with him in just a moment. Another lawsuit has been brought by a group of journalists and Chicago residents to try to stop federal agents in Chicago from infringing on people's rights to protest and on journalists' right to report on protests. As part of that lawsuit, the plaintiffs included some video exhibits about how federal agents have been behaving in Chicago already. Again, before troops even get there. I want to show you 2 of those video exhibits that have been filed as part of this lawsuit. I'm going to show you 2 of them that depict attacks by Trump's federal agents on a priest, on a minister. Here's the first one. This is just about 20 seconds. Watch. You see them spray the minister in the face with chemical spray of some kind. He falls to his knees. In this next exhibit from the lawsuit, you will see Trump's agents shoot the minister with some kind of less than lethal munition. They shoot him in the head. This is about 15 seconds long. You'll see the minister praying. He's standing alone. At the beginning of the tape here, he's standing, praying with his hands raised. Watch. He's a priest. He's a Presbyterian minister.
Joining us now, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin, MSNBC senior political and national correspondent Jacob Soboroff, who was at the governor's office in downtown Chicago, where Governor Pritzker is about to speak at a news conference, retired 4-star general and MSNBC military analyst Barry McCaffrey, and presidential historian and professor of history at Rice University, Douglas Brinkley. Doug, because we started with history, I'm going to begin with you. Talk to me about what the nation was like back in the early 1960s. Why the deployment of the National Guard, the federalizing of the National Guard in Mississippi was necessary in that moment, according to JFK.
Well, it all really began in 1954 with Brown versus Topeka, the Supreme Court decision, which integrated and called for the integration of schools. You see flashpoints in 1957 at Central High School with President Eisenhower having to do the same of sending in National Guards because then Governor Orville Faubus was a segregationist and was refusing to adhere to the Brown decision. And the great clip you just played of President Kennedy, who every time you watch him grows in stature, JFK. But James Meredith was a son of Mississippi. He joined the Air Force after World War II. He was a vet. He quit and he simply wanted to go to school. He thought about going to Jackson State, all-black school, but he decided to go to University of Mississippi and determined he was. He became an icon and a hero for his persistence. But at Oxford became a war zone, not just having to escort Meredith to class, but Molotov cocktails, as you mentioned, people being killed. And in the end, day after day after day, eventually there was calm in Oxford, but the federal troops stayed there for 10 more months because it was like a war zone in Oxford. Eventually, Meredith got his degree at Ole Miss. There's a statue of him at the stadium at University of Mississippi. And last thing, Meredith went on to get a law degree at Columbia, came back to march for freedom and was shot numerous times with bird pellet guns, body just riddled with holes some years later. So the racism in that period in the South was deeply intense.
So I wonder, Jacob, have you seen anything commiserate to that in your reporting? Is it that hot out there right now, so hot because of the tension between maybe ICE enforcement and the protesters, that the only way to cool it off would be to send in the National Guard?
That's not what local elected officials say in any of the places that we have seen, and certainly that I have been reporting on the ground, particularly in Los Angeles. In the early nights in Los Angeles, the use of force by the Los Angeles Police Department and the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department that preceded the deployment of the National Guard under Title 10 of U.S. Code by Donald Trump was about a small gathering because of the deployment of the federal immigration enforcement agents to carry out the stated goal of the largest mass deportation campaign in the history of the United States of America. And we are seeing echoes of those types of protests, but not some kind of wide-scale citywide violence like you would believe to be happening if you listen to what was happening and being said from the White House and certainly by the president himself, the likes of Stephen Miller, Border Czar Tom Homan, who was on the ground in Los Angeles, but we haven't seen here. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem was here last week, and there have been flashpoints where I was talking to you from earlier today as we await Governor Pritzker's news conference here on the day that he has sued the federal government over the potential deployment of the National Guard here to Chicago. That facility, the Broadview facility, the neighborhood where the apartment building was raided, there was certainly a clash between law enforcement and the local citizens here. But that was something that the law enforcement themselves initiated by raiding that building in the overnight hours. Same can be said about the enforcement operation that led to the clash, that led to the shooting of the woman who we've been reporting on here today in Chicago. But again, nothing as you drive around Chicago. I'm in the middle of downtown Chicago in the governor's office right now as we wait to hear beyond this lawsuit what he has to say, both to President Trump and about whether or not the state and the city will do any kind of cooperation whatsoever. The mayor, I should note, signed an executive order today saying that they're basically ice-free zones in Chicago at all city property, not to be used for these immigration enforcement activities. The bottom line is local officials do not want this federal presence here. They certainly don't want a military presence on the ground, and they continue to say that over and over. That's, I think, what we're going to hear from Governor Pritzker here in just a couple of minutes as we await him here in downtown Chicago, Katie.
So, General McCaffrey, I'm hoping you can help me just try to poke into this a little bit further. You know, I wasn't alive in 1962, so I can't speak to how it felt down there in Mississippi or how the country felt. But I was alive in the 90s, and I can tell you how it felt in Los Angeles during the LA riots. And it was scary in Los Angeles. I mean, it was not the entire city. It's a giant city. But there were broad swaths of the city that were lawless and scary. I mean, my dad famously said on camera, it's like the LAPD had abandoned the city of Los Angeles during the riots. He and my mother were over there, over above it, covering the riots as it was happening. Are you seeing anything? Do you have any sympathy for the deployment of the National Guard? Anything that would require the National Guard to come in and assist law enforcement? I mean, we saw a video a few minutes ago of somebody ramming their car into an ICE vehicle. Is that an example of something being a little bit too hot to need the National Guard?
Well, look, there is no insurrection. The cities aren't burning. This is all nonsense. This is a political drama being played out by President Trump. The National Guard is a treasured institution of the country, 430,000 strong. They're our friends and neighbors. They're present at every humanitarian disaster. They are incapable of effectively serving as community law enforcement. So a lot of this is nonsense. We're also missing the point when you look at TV and you're looking at camouflage fatigue wearing law enforcement, body armor, helmets, armored vehicles, M4 carbines, rappelling onto roofs. You're seeing a federal police force taking over what should be state and local law enforcement. We're in a very dangerous period for our time. We do not want the U.S. Armed Forces, National Guard, or federal troops on American city streets trying to enforce the law. They're not very good at it. The bigger question, by the way, has to be asked, who said in the Congress or the voters that we wanted to take 12 million people, deport them from the country, crash the agricultural system, construction, services? Who gave federal law enforcement that authority? Has that been funded by Congress? That's the major question that needs to be addressed by the court system and by Congress.
Lisa, the court system has so far pushed back on Donald Trump's effort to send in the National Guard in many places, including in Oregon. Can't send in the National Guard from Oregon, can't send in the California National Guard, not the Texas National Guard, can't do it. The facts on the ground don't justify it, according to the federal judge out there. When asked about this, Stephen Miller said that there were alternate plans. There were alternate authorities the president have. What do you take that to mean?
I mean, I think the first place that my mind goes is to the Insurrection Act. You were showing that historical footage of President Kennedy when he sent the National Guard to Mississippi and then to Alabama in the 1960s. He did so under the authority of the Insurrection Act, not using Title X, which is the authority that President Trump has relied on now. So far, President Trump has not invoked the Insurrection Act, which is the exception to the Posse Comitatus Act.
As far as what we are hearing, the National Guard, first of all, it's illegal, unconstitutional, it's dangerous, it's wrong. This is not about deportation. This is not about safety for this president. This is about authoritarianism. It's about stoking fear. It's about breaking the Constitution that would give him that much more control over our American cities.
Hi again, everyone. It's now 5 o'clock in New York. More escalations to report in the standoff between our commander-in-chief and American cities he doesn't like. Today, as leaders like the one you just heard, Chicago's mayor, call out Trump's desires to deploy federal troops to the streets of cities run by Democratic elected officials, as Trump in the Oval Office yet again raised the prospect of invoking the Insurrection Act. Today, notable not just for the growing clash of rhetoric, but of troops actually appearing on the ground. The Texas National Guard has arrived in Chicago. The Chicago Tribune reports that its journalists, quote, saw several military members dressed in camouflage and carrying long guns on federal property in the far southwest suburbs Tuesday morning. Soldiers who had T patches on their arms, identical to the one shown in a picture tweeted by Texas Governor Greg Abbott on Monday, could be seen walking in and out of mobile sleeping units on the site, end quote. The presence of these out-of-state troops comes as a judge declined to immediately respond to a lawsuit filed by the state of Illinois, which we covered on this program yesterday. That lawsuit said the Trump administration's efforts to send in the National Guard against the wishes of the state's governor are illegal and unconstitutional. The judge in this case, U.S. District Judge April Perry, said she needed time to go through the government's response to the suit and scheduled a hearing for Thursday, giving Trump and his allies a small window of time to send troops into the Windy City, an opportunity they are seizing upon. But as Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker said to our colleague Rachel Maddow last night, taking this step could be risky before the judge officially rules. Watch.
Well, the judge did warn the federal lawyers that if, in fact, they brought those National Guard and put them on the streets, that would be a really bad idea because there may be a ruling against them in just a couple of days. And I might add that if they do deploy them to the streets and then they are ruled against, I mean, how embarrassing to have to turn tail and run back to Texas 2 days after you've arrived in Chicago.
Chicago being in the state of limbo for a few days stands in contrast to what has happened this week in Portland, where a judge did temporarily block the administration from sending in National Guard troops from other states. The Illinois Attorney General argues in the lawsuit filed yesterday, quote, the American people, regardless of where they reside, should not live under the threat of occupation by the U.S. military, particularly not simply because their city or state leadership has fallen out of a president's favor. That is where we begin the hour. Some of our favorite reporters and friends. MSNBC senior national and political correspondent Jacob Soboroff is on the ground outside Chicago. Also joining us, staff writer at The Atlantic and a contributor to The Atlantic Daily Newsletter, Tom Nichols is here. He's a professor emeritus of national security affairs at the U.S. Naval War College, where he taught for more than 2 decades. Plus, host of the Bulwark podcast, MSNBC political analyst Tim Miller is here. Jacob, I start with you. Just bring me up to date since we talked exactly 24 hours ago of what you're seeing and reporting on the ground in Chicago.
Well, as you said, Nicole, you know, the big development of the day is that the National Guard from Texas is now here. But I think that the point that I believe everyone needs to understand and that is crucially important for us to make is the reason they're here is because the President of the United States and his allies are calling this city and Cook County and the surrounding areas essentially lawless. The situation is out of control. It requires the National Guard to put down and protect not only the federal agents here, but widespread violence across this city. That is not what I have seen in this city at all. And in fact, if they are indeed going after the worst of the worst, we, MSNBC, witnessed the exact opposite today. And I want to tell you one specific anecdotal story that we saw here in Cicero. This is the most Hispanic community in all of Illinois. 89%, almost 90% of the people who live here are Latino or Hispanic out of the 90,000 people that live here. And we showed up at this bakery literally 20 minutes today after they went after and they arrested 2 people. And I want to make sure I give you their names. And let's take a picture. Let's take a picture of them right now so I can show you who they are. Mario Martinez and Daniel Cabrera. This is a video of Border Patrol, there they are. Mario Martinez is on the right, Daniel Cabrera is on the left. The Border Patrol showed up here outside of this bakery. They have been patrolling this neighborhood all day, and they grabbed these guys. We can show that video again. And we've got some surveillance video from inside that they were doing nothing other than grabbing their cup of coffee before their day of work. And they are 2 of multiple people who have been taken in this neighborhood today alone, not because they are the worst of the worst. I also met people, here's some surveillance video, as they chased these guys. They left their cups of coffee, as you see there, sitting down on the trash can outside of the store after Border Patrol. And it looks like they've got someone following them, actually filming there, Nicole, chase them inside this bakery. While we were here reporting on the scene, a cousin of one of the 2 men, Daniel, showed up to ask me, do I know where to find him? I want to show you a little bit of our conversation right now. Watch this.
They just randomly showed up. he didn't do anything wrong. They just took him forcefully. They're scaring everybody around now. So I feel like a target too, even though I'm a U.S. citizen. But
you feel like they would even arrest you?
Yeah, at this point I do.
Does your cousin have a family?
Yeah, he does. His mom, dad, everybody here, his kids.
He's got kids too?
Yeah.
And so now, what country is he from?
He's originally from Mexico, but he was making a life here for his family, and as you can, like I told you, he was about to open up a shop.
I'm really sorry again that you're going through this, and I appreciate it. And I know that you're looking for him. You still don't know where he is.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find any clues, ideas, see where they took him, why they took him, and what's the whole purpose for this.
That's a question, Nicole, that people all across Chicago, but especially today in this neighborhood, are asking. Where are their loved ones? Where are their family members who have been picked up off the street? Not because they're the worst of the worst, but because they were going about their daily activities. Mario Martinez has been in the hospital for the last several months. He had a heart condition, was sick as well. He doesn't have his medication, and his wife was telling us, just like Nori Ramos, who we've introduced to people from on your show as well, not sure that he's going to get his medicine inside ICE detention, what the consequences of that will be, nor if they'll ever see him again, Nicole.
I think people watching wonder how that is possible, that someone who drove up to a bakery to get a cup of coffee is now someone that you can there credibly report his family may never see again. Say more.
Well, that's exactly right. I was at the Broadview ICE detention facility yesterday. Here was the first place I went when I got to Chicago, because it's become somewhat of a flashpoint. It's been this staging location, both for the federal agents, but also for the people that they're bringing there before they send them off to other ICE detention facilities. And I can't tell you the number of people, including people in LA, who we haven't reported about on air, who contact me regularly, almost every day, saying, I can't find my loved one in the system. Usually there's something called an A number that ICE has, and they're able to track people very specifically. But people have been moved around so quickly within this ICE detention system that people are terrified that while they might be able to make contact, and Mr. Martinez was able to contact his wife and say that he hopes that he can get his medicine from her, he doesn't know how long he's going to be detained for here in the Illinois area, if he's going to be sent to a detention center in Arizona or Louisiana or California, and how long it'll be before the Trump administration sends this gentleman to Mexico, a place he hasn't been for much of his life, and leaving the home behind of this beautiful neighborhood, this peaceful neighborhood today in the western suburbs of Chicago.
What is the predicate that they articulate beyond racial profiling?
It's such an important question as well. Governor Pritzker said to Rachel, I thought it was the most fascinating part of the interview last night, about why they are operating in the Chicago area. They are allowed to operate within 100 miles of the U.S. border by statute. But obviously Chicago is not within 100 miles of the northern border to Canada. They are saying they are operating here because Lake Michigan is the border with Canada. And that is the excuse, according to Governor Pritzker, at least what he told Rachel last night. So they're saying they have full reign to drive around as if they are on the southwest border or in a border community on the northern border, to look for people who are undocumented in day-to-day activities. We heard what Greg Bavino said to the local reporter here in Chicago, and I'm paraphrasing, but he essentially said, we can look for people based on their looks, and they may not be looking like you. The reporter was white or Caucasian. That's what people here feel like, that why would the Border Patrol in tactical gear, masked up, be running around chasing people getting a cup of coffee in the most Hispanic neighborhood in the state of Illinois when things are largely peaceful here? Why would an elderly woman around the corner from here around the same time be picked up as she walked down the street? Her neighbor walked out shaking when I was talking to him, so nervous that he had seen this immigration enforcement operation take place on his peaceful residential street, where I asked him, are there murderers and rapists and criminals? Is that what's going on around here? And he said, no, absolutely not. This is a hardworking community. But the Border Patrol says they're operating within their legal right to be within 100 miles of the U.S. border, which I guess, according to Governor Pritzker, is Lake Michigan.
Let me ask you about one more story that we've covered together this week. This is the Chicago Sun-Times, which has had incredible reporting on what's happening in its city. An attorney for the woman shot by Border Patrol claims agents said, quote, do something B-word before shooting. Quote, body camera video of a Border Patrol agent involved in the shooting of a woman who was allegedly chasing agents in Brighton Park over the weekend shows an officer saying, quote, do something B-word before pulling over and shooting the woman 5 times, the woman's attorney said in federal court Monday. The video appears to contradict the government's allegation that Marmar Martinez, 30 years old, drove toward officers before one of them opened fire on her late Saturday morning on Kedzie Avenue near 39th Street. Her attorney, Christopher Parenti, said at a detention hearing at the Dirksen Federal Courthouse. What is your understanding of who is crafting the government statements and their association with the truth at this point?
You know, we reached out to ICE and CBP about what happened here, Nicole, and it's radio silence. And you hear from them in times, I feel, as someone who tries to get answers from them regularly, when these things reach a boiling point that they're sort of forced to respond. And this one was a flashpoint that everybody saw. A woman was shot, and now this alternate telling of the story is coming out that contradicts their initial explanation of what happened. And we have seen that time and again. One thing we've also seen time and again that's consistent with that telling of the story, and obviously I can't confirm those specifics myself, is the aggressive nature of the behavior of the federal agents on the streets. And in essence, they want people to see how aggressive they're being, whether it's marching down Michigan Avenue with masks and long rifles, or coming into a community like this, driving around. I've seen from rapid response community members here today alone, agents sticking less lethal weapons out the windows, yelling at protesters or people who are monitoring them. That aggressive behavior is what is the constant. The inability to get a straight answer from ICE or CBP, in my experience as a journalist, has also been a constant in this large-scale mass deportation effort, whether it's at Home Depot parking lots in Los Angeles or here in Cicero in Chicago. And that's why I think it's so important that, and I'm grateful to you and to MSNBC for having us here on the ground so that we can see it for ourselves. We were only 20 minutes behind this, but these incidents are happening every day all around this community now for almost 1 month. It'll be a month on the 8th.
Donald Trump is attempting to sell a lie that Chicago is overwhelmed with violence and terror in order to justify deploying U.S. troops onto the streets of that city. But the reality is there is not a big violent mayhem in Chicago, but there are residents getting disappeared off the street by ICE. MSNBC correspondent Jacob Soboroff is on the ground in Chicago and today witnessed the aftermath of a woman getting snatched by masked Customs and Border Patrol officers and put into an unmarked vehicle. And this video you're about to see was taken by a neighbor who was also on the scene when this happened.
Señora, no tiene que decirles nada si tiene papeles.
Hey, ciudadana americana.
What's your? Yes, I am. What's your badge
number? Are you a United
number?
States citizen?
I am. Are you?
Okay,
I'm
gonna need you to stay away from here.
Okay.
All right.
Señora, ¿cómo se llama?
Hey.
Señora, ¿cómo se llama?
No está impidiendo la investigación.
Señora, ¿cómo se llama? Para decirle a su familia. Don't touch me. You're not allowed to touch me. Señora, ¿cómo se llama? Dígame su nombre. Dígame su nombre. Look at guys. Look at this fascist right here. Señora, dígame su nombre. Grítelo.
She's in. Sin.
Grítelo otra vez. Grítelo. ¡Ah, se está aquí! ¡No salgan! ¡Ah, se está aquí! ¡No salgan!
Joining me now from the Broadview Detention Center outside of Chicago is MSNBC senior national correspondent Jacob Soboroff. Jacob, you have a follow-up update, as I understand it, from the arrest video we just played. Tell us more about that.
Jen, since I was on that street and after that apprehension happened, we have learned that woman's name is Maricela Rosales. She is 53 years old. She has been in the United States since arriving here from Mexico 30 years ago. She has a family, and tonight she's here inside the Broadview Detention Center. And we know that because, as we were reporting earlier today, on the street in Cicero, Illinois, a young woman came up to me and said, I'm looking for my mother. I haven't seen her, and I fear she might have been detained by ICE. Her name is Samantha, and I pulled out my phone to show her some of the video that we had, and I want to show you a little bit of what happened next. Watch this.
Señora, ¿cómo se llama? Para decirle a su familia. Don't touch me. You're not allowed to touch me.
can stop if you want.
Dígame su nombre.
Stop.
Look, guys, look at this fascist right here.
That's her. It's her.
I'm so sorry to be the one to show you this picture of your mother. What's it like for you to see her there with her ponytail and her backpack and her pink sweatpants, talking to these guys with guns and masks and their bulletproof vests?
I mean, based off her facial expression, she looks ready to cry. And that saddens me because she just wanted to go to the store. She was going to make some albóndigas, which is basically a meatball stew.
She just wanted to go
She
make
was
a
going
meatball
to the
stew.
supermarket. Yeah, a meatball stew. A meatball stew, Jen.
It's so powerful to see this, Jacob, and you're so tireless on the ground. I know you also have video of CBP officers appear to be harassing someone who was filming them on the street shortly before Maricela was arrested. The Chicago Tribune reported that federal agents have pointed weapons at people recording. We've only seen what we see on video, but when you talk to residents of these Chicago neighborhoods, how do they feel? I mean, are they terrified? I mean, I would be.
Don't take it from me, Jen. Let's watch the video. This is what happened in the moments before Maricela was actually apprehended by the Border Patrol. And this was a video taken by another community member. Check this out.
Do you guys have any identification on you?
Yeah, you see it. It's on our vest.
Do you guys have a badge number or a name?
No, you don't need all that.
I don't need. Why don't I need any of that?
You have ID on you?
Do you guys need my ID? What's the reason for stopping me?
What's the reason for following us, honking your horn?
You guys are going through a neighborhood and you guys are stopping people on the street with no reason.
Well, I suggest you stop following us, all right? Otherwise, we're going to arrest you for impeding your audit.
I'm not impeding anything
We're
right
letting
now.
you know this is the first warning and last warning.
Okay.
You got that?
What are your guys' names?
This right here.
This is what's happening in the streets of Chicago, all around Cook County and in the Chicagoland area. And the folks that they're going after are not the worst of the worst. And I cannot say that more unequivocally and clearly enough. Maricela was going, as we talked about, to buy meat to make a stew. October 31st, Halloween, would be her 54th birthday. Samantha, her daughter, told us she wanted to buy her perfume for that birthday, and she was saving up until she was paid with this paycheck from her job in order to go and do that. Now what Samantha is doing is trying to find her mom inside this facility after those very agents picked her up off the street today. Jen.
There's been reporting today, of course, that there's more coming tomorrow. We'll see what happens. I'm sure you'll be reporting for us. I remember in L.A., when you were reporting from the ground, people sort of were staying in their homes. They weren't going to work. People were afraid of going to school or going out into the community at all. Are you seeing the same thing happen in these communities in Chicago?
Oh, yeah, there's an absolute chilling effect. I was just actually checking my Instagram direct messages, and someone messaged me and said, hey, I was taking a run earlier today while you were interviewing those people, and I ran right by you. I also saw down the street ICE agents in a particular vehicle engaged in another operation. And the message is basically that people are terrified. Their daily activities are being interrupted by armed and masked federal agents on the street. You don't have to wait for the National Guard here to see militarized federal policing on the streets of Chicago. It is already happening in a city that is largely peaceful. Nobody's saying that there aren't violent parts of this city and that violent crime doesn't happen just like they do in red and blue cities and states all across the country. But what local leadership is saying here is give us the resources and we will handle those problems with grants to do community-based policing. We don't need troops on our streets. And we don't even need to wait for the National Guard because those troops are already here. That's why Governor Pritzker said in that press conference yesterday, as you highlighted before the break, that he believes this is a pretext for invoking the Insurrection Act and having troops all across the country, Jen.
Jacob Soboroff, so important to see what's going on the ground. Thank you so much for joining us from Chicago.
Thanks.